Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Daily with me and the Grumpy Sailor Actual. Look, the Grumpy Sailor Actual has a YouTube channel. Check him out. Let's support that channel because he is bringing truth to the table, and it is very important that you get this information. Why? Because we'll call it his real job. Is he works at the VA as well, not nothing other than a VA raider. So he has some great inside knowledge, and he also throws out some funny things. He's made fun of me. He's made fun of other people, whatever. It's all in jokes, all in fun. That's why we're actually able to actually have a conversation, which is good.
Exactly.
It's about being an adult and being able to move forward and understand that the big picture is really trying to help veterans. So,
Yep.
you know, the Grumpy Sailor, this is my question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand that this is all from your perspective and your thoughts as the Grumpy Sailor. You're not representing the VA. You're not
Right.
speaking as a VA raider, but you bring that knowledge, and that's what's important. Inside the VA, what are the views regarding privately provided DBQs, Nexus Letters, that type of stuff? And how impactful is that? Has there been any sort of information put out by the VA, any directives, anything like that? The floor is yours, sir. Feel free to introduce yourself and then dive into it.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jason, as always, man, I appreciate you having me on your platform, allowing us to, get the message out to the veterans and their families so we can take care of one another. Oh, yes. So I'm a Grumpy Sailor Actual. So, yeah, man, this is something that's just been going on. And I want to talk about the private DBQs and the private nexuses. Look, so we just recently had training at our regional office from National. And this is something that we do very often. And we target quality. And the thing that really stuck out to me was when they start talking about these private DBQs, it was just like, oh, okay, you have my full attention. I mean, not saying I wasn't paying attention, but you get what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
the M21, the M21 manual defense, it says, look, face value. I just took down some notes. Face value rule. M21, okay, explicitly states that privately completed DBQs must generally be taken at face value, right? Raiders aren't doctors. For the sound of all the RBSRs, adjudicators, look, we're not doctors. And even if you are a medical doctor, you're not one now. You're doing what your job is to do as a adjudicator, right? So Raiders cannot play doctor and just toss a private DBQ because it gives a max rating. And they hit hard on that. So what? We don't know, right? We got to now look, we got to take, unless it is wildly inconsistent with the medical record or it looks fraudulent, it holds the evidentiary weight. It holds the weight. And just because someone had got it from somewhere, they may be in another state. Yes, you got to take that into consideration, but it doesn't just rip it apart. And Jason, I see a lot of this, man. I didn't get out, to get into it with like almost brawls about this with other raiders. Like, what are you doing? Why did you even order this exam? You wasted time. You had to send this veteran to an exam, and you added 30 days to it, and then now it has to come back to you, then send back to us, where you could have just looked at this file, looked at this, and made sure it clicked, it hit all the boxes, which it did, and you just wasted time. And now I have two DBQs I'm looking at, and I'm looking at, okay, now I can utilize both of them because we have that power to do so. I can say, okay, well, which one is going to give the betterment of the veteran? Which one is going to give him the max benefit? Okay, we need to get out of our own ways because we are stepping on one another, and ultimately we're falling on the veteran. Because look, there's a reason why that person bought a private DBQ. Okay, maybe they feel that they went to several contract examinations or at the VAMC. Because we do contract out to like LSGS, Optum, and VES, all of those, and at the VA doctors. Look, sometimes those places it's hard to get in certain exams. So they're actually doing us a favor by bringing that examination and that link, that medical nexus letter, right? So
Right.
look, it's we need to stop. We need to stop that because we're ultimately hurting the veteran.
Right.
Everything checks out, stop doing it. For all the
Right.
RVSRs, I'm gonna have to keep saying this. Stop doing
Yeah.
it. We are not doctors, and if you do
Right.
do it, look, the VBMS note is required. Per M21, if a rater actually deems a private DBQ insufficient, they can't just ignore it and order another C&P exam, right?
Yep.
They're required to put a permanent note in VBMS explaining exactly why the
Mm.
private DBQ is insufficient.
Right.
For those
Yep.
who are experiencing this, and you get a decision letter, in your narrative, it should have something saying that why we felt that this was not efficient,
Right.
because a lot of times, man, when you see such and such post-traumatic stress disorder denied. Okay. Now it is some caveats with that. Now, anything when it comes to mental health and when it comes to like say post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic TBI, TBI, those
Yeah.
have to be done initially by the VA. Those are like non-negotiables. Those ones have to be done by
Right.
the VA, the
Yeah.
initial
Yeah.
ones.
There's
But now,
not a
yeah,
public facing. Right.
right. So subsequent ones, they can be done by other providers. Now
Right.
I've seen all kind of I've seen all kind of I've seen ones from your private doctor, which is great. Now you get some from the private doctors. A lot of times, from what I've noticed from the private providers, is that they don't really understand how and what to say to make it connect. They're trying. Now, yes, you have some VA doctors that, hey, they know how to do it. They can get it done. And some doctors, they prefer, look, I don't even want to be bothered with it, right? I don't want to be bothered with it. And then you have some people who are, they're out there that do private medical examinations. A lot of them are ex-military, and people do go to them. I'm not
Right.
talking about the medical mills or stuff, that are scamming
Right.
out veterans. I'm not talking about that. But
Yes.
people are going to go to where they feel they are going to get help. You understand?
That's right.
So, but the thing is, when people bring in these nexus letters and these examinations, we should take it for face value. And this was talked about yesterday, actually, and saying that, look, man, we have to do this. Now, when it comes time for quality to come back up, and they take this to our HLR, where
Mhm.
a more seasoned review officer looks at
Right.
it, and they're going to say, "Look, why did you just look at this the first time? Why did you take this?" And now it has to go back, and it's just waste time. And HLR, having to appeal it, it takes so much time. Where
Right.
we should
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
the onus
Yep.
and do that. You understand?
Agreed.
Private DBQs, I love them. They're good to go unless they're inconsistent. Now, don't
Of
be
course.
showing up here, and it's just like, Fred Flintstone, something, on there, something ridiculous like that.
Right.
It just needs to make sure that
Yeah.
it's grounded, and it is strong, and it's ready to go, and it states your truth, right?
Yep.
It states your truth.
So there's a couple different things here that I really want to point out.
Yeah.
And one is the VA has now essentially directed raters
Yeah.
to give credit to the appropriate credit and weight to private DBQs. Like the VA came in and said, "Hey, look, raters, everybody needs to toe the line here. And when you get a piece of evidence in, medical evidence, that's a DBQ, private DBQ, I don't care what you think about it. to a point, right? Unless it's glaring fraud, right? Cut and
Glaring,
pasted.
yeah.
You know, it's the words are twisted sideways. It's different font. There's no signature. You know, it looks like a lithograph, whatever, right? Barring that, okay, barring fraud, straight up fraud,
Exactly.
raters, you better actually give the weight that these things are due. These are coming from medical providers, and you need to give it that appropriate weight. So that's awesome. Now the other piece here is, and this is the nuanced aspect of it, and you kind of touched on it here a little bit, but I want the veteran community to really understand what it means. Now, in my opinion, when I think of a DBQ, Disability Benefits Questionnaire, I think of a form that you're going to have a medical provider complete, wherever this medical provider is or who they are, right? A private one, you get it, you take it to your doctor, you take it, you go work with an organization that specializes in helping veterans document their medical conditions and what have you. Wherever you take it, a medical provider is the one who's completing this thing and signing it at the bottom. And the information that's contained in it is primarily questions that are going to require answers to help the VA rater determine the appropriate rating. So really, the tool of the DBQ is to facilitate the ability for a rater to assign the appropriate rating, because it's spelling out the severity of the condition really as it relates to and what's pertinent to the rating schedule. So this is where it really kind of comes into play. Now, what happens though, in my opinion, is sometimes there's the fill in the blanks, and the doctor has to type in their thoughts on answering that specific question. But if you take it to your doctor, this is my family doctor that I've been seeing for 30 years, and I take it to that doctor and I say, hey, can you complete this form? And they say yes. And I give it to them, and then they give it back to me. Well, that doctor doesn't know and probably didn't look to see what the rating schedule even says. So they're just answering blindly, which means now the VA rater has to look at this document and try to go, okay, well, what does this most closely align with in the rating schedule? In some cases, it might help the veteran. In most cases, I believe this actually hurts the veteran because the doctor wasn't aligning the answers to the VA's rating schedule to help the rater assign the appropriate rating. Now, I'd like to just hear your thoughts on getting DBQs from private doctors that don't really give the solid information that is spelled out in the rating schedule. So now you, the rater, you have information, you have enough information to read and look at. Do you have to kind of guess where it falls on that rating schedule by reading the rating schedule and then reading the answers and going, okay, well, here we are, and this is close enough? How's that work for you?
Well, for me personally, man, of course, I'm gonna look at the whole, the totality of the medical record. You know, everything that, the VA records, if there are any, the service treatment records, JOV, whatever may be in there, the private, and sometimes, the 4138, those buddy statements, and I'm going to look at it, and I'm just going to, first I'm going to check for all if everything's consistent. But sometimes it's where it's a judgment call. And we talk, and one of the RQRSs, they talked about, a judgment call. Sometimes we have to make that judgment call, and we shouldn't get penalized for errors that raters get for making judgment calls on certain claims, right? So sometimes for me, I'm always in the best interest for the veteran. And I have a model that my mentor always told me, man, that,
I love this.
He always told me this, and it stuck with me. Grant if you can, deny if you must. Grant if you can, and deny if you must. We're not sitting up here just trying to deny you, and I think we as processors, we need to understand that, look, we're here for the veterans. You understand that when they submit this information, you look at all the evidence. If you feel like you need to order an examination for clarity, okay, you can do that. But if you feel that you have a DBQ and you feel that instead of ordering an examination and picking up a phone through, you know, whatever you have, a Teams phone, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying, and you can
Yeah.
call that veteran, right? You can call that veteran and say, hey, man, I got your private DBQ in front of me, and I'm just trying to make sense of this. Your doctor said this here. Is there a way that you can potentially explain this to me? Or
Mhm.
we don't always have time to do this, right? But if you feel
Right.
like there, you can. But
Right.
instead of just and sometimes, hey, you tell them where you're calling from, and you tell them who you are. Look, they'll be floored because we don't
Mm.
normally do this, right?
Right.
And you can get that answer from them instead of having to go out and order another examination. But if it lines up and if it's within reason, I'm rolling with it. You
Right.
understand? And sometimes when I see another exam that came in, and I'm like, why did you even do this? I'll
Mhm.
Teams message the VSR, like, why did you do this? Why did you submit this? And if not, because I'm just trying to get a explanation. Maybe I missed something. I'm looking through the
Right.
notes and everything, but I'm gonna take
Yeah.
it. I'm gonna take what they submit, and I'm gonna take um, what they order the exam for, or whatever it
Mhm.
is, and I'm going to take what's I believe is best for the veteran. And
Yeah.
that's just how I roll. Now, that's how the grumpy sailor gets down,
Right.
and not everybody does, but it is a lot of people that do come to me and ask me, for advice. And I was like, okay. And they say, okay, I understand that now. Right. And it's all
Mhm.
about look, I know it's production and we're all trying to, you're trying to get your thing done, but we have to stop and look, we're playing with people's lives, where
That's
people
right.
are, some veterans are homeless, some
Yep.
veterans are terminal.
Yep.
It's I deal with ALS claims a lot.
Mhm.
Well, I started doing with them, and when they come in, it's time. Everything is time. You don't have time to wait around. You got to get those pushed through. All right, so what I'm saying, man, is these private. I'm gonna read this right quick. I ain't gonna be long. 38 CFR 3.159 Alpha 1. This is a regulatory bedrock. It legally defines competent medical evidence to include private medical opinions. The VA cannot reject a Nexus letter or independent medical opinion simply because a veteran paid for it or because it didn't come from a VA doctor. The face value rule, M21-1, dictates that lay and medical evidence provided by the veteran should generally be accepted again as face value unless there's reason to doubt or question it. A rater disagreeing with the conclusion, again, is not a legal reason to doubt, right? So, look, the magic words, I think I made a video on this. It has to explicitly state that standard, at least as likely as not, or greater probability. You understand? And it's and the veteran has to do their part too. You get as much information that you can, but us as RBSRs and VSRs, it is our job and our duty to assist. And we're not doing a duty to assist when we're just um, kicking the DBQ out the question, out of the area. It's not saying it's not sufficient. You heard the same advice and the same directive that I heard. So let's do the right thing.
That's right. It's all great advice and direction actually coming from the VA. I'm glad that they're pushing on that. It takes time to turn the ship. Over time, people will slowly start to uh, maybe change their mindsets a little bit. I've heard in the past that there was VA raters that would discount anything that they thought that maybe was a statement that was helped with AI, and that's a no-go too. Look, if you get I think that, in fact, I actually almost view it the other way, right? A veteran sometimes has a hard time articulating things. Maybe they get like, a small little paragraph put together and they feel as though, this is inadequate, man. I need some more. My writing skills aren't that great. I don't, let's be honest, most of us don't have to write a lot of stuff. And so that skill kind of dissipates over time. So having some assistance with AI, with the tools that are out there, if you give it the read over, you're making sure that it's legit, everything does tie together and it all makes sense and it's all truthful, there's no issue in that. In fact, I actually look at it like this veteran actually cares and is trying to document the stuff and provide the evidence needed for a VA rater to rule in their favor. At the end of the day, Grumpy Sailor, I think that the moral of this story is, from a veteran's perspective, it's a twofold. VA needs to do a better job as a whole of accepting what comes in and giving it the value that it needs. And there's actually a push to do that. And from the veteran's perspective, and I've always said this, we need to make sure that we're providing the information needed for the raters and the VA in general to rule in our favor for service connection, for the appropriate rating, and to determine if the condition is static in nature or not. If we're providing them that information, we're doing the right things. So with that, hey, thanks for making it again. You know what? I will have you on again very shortly. So I appreciate you. And again, if you have not checked out Grumpy Sailor's channel, please check it out. Subscribe, all that good stuff. We really appreciate it. Thanks again for making it. Appreciate everybody. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.